In 1629, a Dutch ship hit a reef before dawn, off an unmapped coast. Most aboard survived the wreck. Then the man left in charge set out to murder most of them. His name was Jeronimus Cornelisz, an educated apothecary with no record of violence. On that island, he crowned himself king. He ordered the killing of more than 100 men, women, and children. But the people he sent away to die are the ones who beat him. They built a fort that still stands today, the oldest surviving European building in Australia. And 400 years later, we still can't agree what Cornelius actually was. First, the version everyone agrees on. The Batavia was the brand new flagship of the Dutch East India Company. She sailed for the East Indies in 1628 and never arrived. Before dawn on the 4th of June, 1629, she struck a coral reef off Western Australia. About 40 people drowned. More than 250 reached a chain of low coral islands, among them soldiers and wealthy women. But the islands had almost no water. People would die of thirst within days. So the commander, Francisco Pelsart, took a small boat and ran for help. He sailed more than 1,500 miles to Java. He made it, but he'd left over 200 people behind. And by the time he got back, most of them were dead. Not from thirst. They'd been murdered. That's the textbook version. What happened on those islands is darker and stranger. So who was the man? Jeronimus Cornelisz was a Dutch pharmacist with a shop in Haarlem. Not a soldier, not a sailor. By 1628, his business had failed and his name was ruined. So he sold up and joined the company. And VOC merchants weren't sailors. They were administrators who ran the cargo and books. So even a bankrupt chemist could come aboard as undermerchant, second in command of the whole ship. Nothing in his past marked him as a killer, because when Pelsart sailed for help, that rank left Cornelius the most senior man alive. He hadn't earned it. He just outranked everyone still breathing. So he seized control by force. His men took the only weapons, then the food and the water. Now everyone else needed him to eat and drink. He made them swear an oath of obedience. He took the best tent and the officers' fine clothes. He handed the women to his men and kept the wealthiest for himself. A bankrupt chemist had made himself king, and a king needed fewer subjects. So why does a chemist start ordering murders? On the voyage out, Cornelius had joined a plan to seize the Batavia and turn pirate. Then the ship wrecked before the plot could spring. But the plan didn't die with it. A rescue ship would come for the survivors one day. And Cornelius knew what that ship meant for him. Hard questions about the plot. Maybe a noose. So he'd seize the rescue ship instead and vanish. For that, he needed a small, loyal crew, not 200 frightened witnesses. He already held the weapons and the water, so the killing started. And almost none of it was by his own hand. He sent people off in boats that came back without them. He stranded others on bare islands to die of thirst. The sick, families, children. No one's pinned the exact number, but it's somewhere past 100. And the man giving the orders barely raised his voice. But one group of his victims refused to die on schedule. Those were the soldiers. About 20 trained men who could fight back as a group, the threat Cornelius feared most. So he got rid of them the clever way. He told them a nearby island might have water. He took their weapons and sent them to look. He expected them to find nothing and die of thirst. It was the worst mistake he ever made, because the soldiers found water. They found wallabies too, and birds, and seals. The island he'd picked as a death sentence was the richest in the chain. His own camp was starving on bare coral. The men he'd written off were getting stronger. Then a survivor escaped the killing and swam to their island. He told them everything. And the man who'd sent them to die was about to learn what they'd been building. Now a quick run of things that sound invented and aren't. The ship was carrying a fortune. Most of it survived. Chests of silver, a carved Roman gem. It came through the wreck and the massacre and sits in a museum today. The ship even carried a grand stone gateway cut into blocks. Divers raised it from the seabed and rebuilt it. All of it off Western Australia, about 140 years before Captain Cook reached the continent. None of it is legend. It's in the company's own ledgers. So what had the soldiers been building? Their leader was an ordinary soldier named Veeb Hayes. He'd turned the island into a fortress. They had no weapons, so they made their own. Clubs studded with long nails driven through planks. And they stacked coral and limestone into walls above the only landing. That little stone fort is still there. It's the oldest surviving European building in Australia, built by men who'd been left to die. Cornelius sent his killers to take the island. They were beaten back. He sent them again, beaten back again. Well-fed soldiers behind stone walls, against starving men climbing a slope. Finally, Cornelius went to them himself to try to buy them off. And Veeb Hayes took him prisoner. The king of the island was now the captive of the men he'd condemned. And then the story turns again. As that last attack was breaking, a sail appeared on the horizon. Pelsart had come back with a rescue ship. Now it was a race. Cornelius's men wanted to reach it first and seize it, but Hayes's soldiers got there first. They told Pelsart everything. Caught between a fort and a warship, the mutineers gave up. Pelsart held a trial right there on the islands. By the law of the day, that meant torture to drag out confessions. The ringleaders were sentenced to lose a hand, then hang. Cornelius lost both of his. They were hanged on a small island nearby, the first Europeans ever executed on Australian soil. But Cornelius never repented. He blamed everyone but himself, and with his hands already gone, the minister who watched him die wrote that he was still screaming one word: revenge. So, the argument that's never been settled. What turned a bankrupt chemist into that? There are three answers. The first is the simplest. He was a psychopath. The historian who wrote the definitive book lands here. Charming, grandiose, no remorse. A man who could talk others into killing for him. The wreck didn't make him that. It just took the lid off. The second answer is stranger. Back in Holland, Cornelius is said to have fallen in with a heretic. The man preached that hell was a lie, that sin was an invention, that a man filled with God could do no wrong. If you truly believe that, nothing you do is evil. Under that reading, he wasn't mad. He was consistent. The third answer is the coldest. Maybe every murder was just arithmetic. Fewer mouths, fewer witnesses, a tighter crew for the escape. We'll probably never know which it was, because everything we're told about his mind comes from the men who tortured him and then hanged him. And that points at a second argument. Was the company's justice really justice? On one side, yes. More than 100 people were dead. The man behind it never showed a flicker of regret. A court was held by the rules of the day, and he hanged. On the other side, it's not so clean. The confessions came out of torture. And almost everything we know traces back to Pelsart, the same Pelsart who had every reason to shape the story, and who'd sailed away and left those people on a waterless rock in the first place. He judged the killers. Then the company judged him. They blamed him for the abandonment. They stripped his pay and ruined him. He was dead within a year. So where does this leave us? The Batavia is splinters on a reef. The company that ran all of this is 3 centuries gone. But the little stone fort the condemned men built is still standing. And the 2 youngest killers were never hanged. Maybe they were simply too young. Pelsart had them put ashore on the Australian mainland instead. One was barely more than a boy. They walked off into a continent no European had crossed, and they were never seen again. The first Europeans to live in Australia were two murderers the company marooned to be rid of. So pick a side. Was Cornelius a psychopath, a true believer, or just a man doing the math? And was the company's justice any cleaner than his? Tell me below.